In 1998, I had the extremely good privilege to be sent to England by my family. I went on a school trip with kids from Missouri and California, and I was chaperoned by my 8th grade English teacher. This experience was a game-changing tipping point for me in my life. As a young person on the cusp of high school, I got to go through passport control, see new country landscape, meet diverse populations of people from all over the world. I got to stand in the middle of Stonehenge and stare out across the countryside of southern England. On this trip, what I learned is that for me, curiosity was my future. In this moment, I decided that curiosity was what I should do with the rest of my life. It became my purpose. So fast forward 6 years, in 2004, I was getting ready to graduate from college at the University of Missouri, and my friend asked me if I wanted to go to Europe. And I had been saving up my money for an opportunity such as this, so he and I went to Europe, and we rode trains across England and Scotland and Ireland, the Netherlands, Italy, Austria, the Czech Republic, and many more. We stood in the great squares of Europe, where history's greatest and worst leaders have proclaimed unity or apartheid, progress or regress. And we began to feel connected to the people in history that have lived in generations before us. We would be riding on a train through the Swiss countryside and be listening to the conversations around us, and we would hear 10 to 20 languages being spoken within 10 to 20 minutes within 10 to 20 rows. In this moment, I was absolutely blown away by the power of diversity in the world. And I knew that I had to continue this journey to meet as many people as I possibly could. Being on a train can change a life. On this train, I reminded myself once again that curiosity is my life plan. It's what I was meant to do. So I put this plan into place in December of 2006. I was getting ready to graduate from the University of Missouri, and I got an email from the College of Education at the University of Missouri that said, International Teaching Job Fair, University of Northern Iowa, register now. So I did. 2 months later, I found myself standing in a frigid Iowa winter, interviewing for jobs in places such as Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, South Korea, Austria, Mexico. And it was astonishing. I met people from all over the world that came to talk to me about working at their school and teaching their children. What did I have to teach them? I was 22. I'd never lived outside of Missouri. And yet they were willing to place their faith in me. One school in Mexico offered me a job, and I accepted on the spot. What did I have to lose, right? So before I went to Mexico, though, I landed another random job as a summer camp counselor at a YMCA summer camp on the north shore of Oahu in Hawaii, where the television show Lost was filmed. And so I went. It was amazing. In the camp, half of the staff were from countries all over the world, and I went from living in Columbia, Missouri, to living in cabins with Paraguayans, Japanese, Brazilian, Canadian, German, Greek, and Swiss, people my age. We had the most amazing conversations, and every single day, they became annoyed at how many questions I asked them about their countries. But I was growing every day, and we talked for months and months about how much we enriched each other by having those amazing conversations. I also worked closely with children from China, from Portugal, from Brazil, from Spain, from the mainland of the United States, and from the island of Hawaii. And I realized that the more people I met, the more people I wanted to meet. It opened me up every single time, and it continued to open me to new experiences, to new people, to new philosophies, to new ideas. I no longer wanted to live in my bubble. I wanted to experience everything. So after Hawaii, I went to Mexico, and I was immediately taken under the wing of the athletic director in the school that I worked at. His name was Oscar. He drove me around, took me on a tour of the city, showed me the places to eat, tried to teach me some Spanish, and for the first time, I found myself as a racial, cultural, linguistic, and religious minority. I began to feel and understand what it meant to be an outsider. It changed me. I began to feel new feelings of gratitude and compassion towards people from all over the world who have felt that outsider sense. And it took until I was 23 to feel like an outsider. So Oscar and I were driving around one day, and I said to him, "Oscar, do you ever want to move to the United States?" And he looked at me, and he said, "Well, no, of course not. My family and friends are here. I've lived here my whole life. Why would I want to leave?" And I want to take a moment to pause here, and I want you to think about my utter ignorance in this moment. Here I was, assuming that all people in Mexico wanted to move to the United States, and Oscar flipped this notion right on its head. He showed me a new way of thinking, and I began to think, why do I think about the world this way? Why do I think about people in the world in such a manner? What does it say about me that I thought this? What does it say about the fact that I was able to so nonchalantly ask him such a question? And I began to see things in new ways once again. So after Mexico, I was lucky enough to land another international teaching job at a suburban London school. And I found myself in a completely different diverse environment. All of a sudden I looked out, and there were Muslim students, Hindu students, Jewish students, Christian students, students from Africa, students from the Caribbean, students from all over mainland Europe, sitting right in front of me. And I realized that I was not actually their teacher. They were my teachers. I had virtually nothing to offer them, but they brought so much into my life that continues to inspire me to this day. There was one girl in particular named Natalia, who was from Poland. And Natalia spoke no English. She knew 2 English words, hi and toilet. She cried every day. And so her and I would sit at my desk, and I would type things in English into Google Translate it into Polish, and I would just watch her eyes light up. And I thought about how much Natalia and I had in common just a few months before when I was living in Mexico, and I didn't understand the language, and I didn't understand the culture, and I didn't understand the customs. And now Natalia was in that place. But here I was, being paid a salary as a teacher in England, and the only reason that I was more valuable than her is because of the language that I spoke. And that taught me so much about the way that we value and marginalize human beings around the world. Now, the way that these people are presented in the American media is very troubling, and my friends in Mexico and England were always so curious about why Americans seem to think they know so much about other countries in the world, despite having some of the lowest rates of adult passport possession in the world. Only 36% of American adults have a passport, compared to 75% of British and Australian people, and 60% of Canadian people. Yet we seem to think we know so much. So these experiences taught me that curiosity is the meaning of life. And whenever I came back to the United States, I realized that I needed to pursue something where my curiosity could never be satiated. So I got a job here teaching. And I started teaching classes on religion and philosophy. And I made it my mission to put people in front of my students who would enrich their lives in ways that I was enriched while living in other countries. So in my religious studies class, we read a lot. And we meet a lot of wonderful people, and we go on field trips. We've met Hindu men and women in the local community and gone to a temple. We've met Orthodox rabbis and gone to a synagogue. We have met multiple denominations of Christian priests, pastors, and ministers, and read the Gospels. We have met Zen and Tibetan Buddhist monks. We have met Sikhs. We have met Baha'i. We have met people from as many religions as possible. And we also read all of those holy texts. And for me, what it does is it is constantly challenging for me. It is constantly fulfilling for me. And I think that it does the same thing for the students. My students are miles ahead of where I was intellectually when it comes to knowledge about the world. And I'm trying to instill that in them. I'm trying to give them experiences that when I left and when I went abroad, I would have benefited from so much. And I'm so grateful to all the guests in the community that continue to help me do this work, and I'm grateful to my students. So what have I learned from all these experiences? I've learned that I'm extremely privileged. Not everybody has the opportunity to do what I've done, to go where I've gone, to meet who I've met. And what I'm trying to do is to bring that luck and that good fortune into practice in my classroom every single day. And it's also taught me a lot about how we think about the world. Whenever my students meet the local Hindu community, and then they see on the news of Indian men getting shot at a restaurant in Olathe, Kansas, will they stop and reflect and think about the local Hindu community here in town that they've met and talked to? When they see a Jewish cemetery desecration in St. Louis, will they stop and think about the local Jewish community here in town that they've met and built relationships with? When they hear things on the media like, quote, "I think Islam hates us," will they stop and think about the wonderful local Muslim community that have come and visited us in our school and talked to us about what it's like to be a religious minority? I think that they do. I think that they begin to think about things in new ways, and I think that they leave here better people. So for me, curiosity is the meaning of life. I want you to be as curious as possible. I want you to say yes to new experiences. I want you to go and meet as many people as possible, because when you get old, to the middle and to the end of your life, all of those experiences will lead you to have an enriched, lovely, beautiful feeling. Curiosity changed my life, and I think that it can change yours too. Thank you.